6. Hockey's coming around 7, 8, 9. He's getting it. It looks like the 039 is picking up speed on the inside. You know why it is? He's coming back. It's lucky offload.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Sound like
want to be able to just keep my eyesight always focused in here. So this HUD, heads-up display, is focused on infinity. This is from an F-18, and it shows me my airspeed, my altitude, my heading, and this is actually a gun display where I've got it engaged, I've got it locked on a surface target, and it's showing me how far I am on a little cue of when to go trigger down so that my bullets actually hit the target at the right velocity. So really neat stuff, and I don't have to come down. Now they even have, that's actually outboard technology, believe it or not, helmets with a visor in front with all the information displayed right there. Now I don't look just out front of my airplane. Wherever I move my head, I have all that information available to me. F-35, who's heard of the F-35? It has 6 called distributed aperture systems. He's obviously smart on the airplane. I can actually, in the F-35, look down through the bottom of my airplane, and it's showing me what I'm seeing underneath. So the airplane, there's one variant of the F-35, the Marine version, that does vertical takeoff and landing, right? So where the old airplanes that did that, they had to look around the side. This pilot just looks right through the airplane, looks down, and knows exactly where it's at. It's fantastic technology. Last thing is, I'll talk about how fast I can use fuel. This is pretty cool. So he takes off with, I forgot how many 370,000 pounds of fuel. I only had 20,000 pounds of fuel in my airplane, so I can't fly nearly as long as he is, but sometimes I need to. Some of the missions I flew while I was still active duty were up to 8 hours long, right? So I'm in a little fighter jet by myself for 8 hours. No way I've got fuel for that. So we do in-flight refueling. We put the gas station up in the sky, and when we say we need fuel, we go find the refueling station. He puts out this basket that's on a hose. We have a switch to a probe. This probe comes out from the side of the airplane. It's got a receptacle. We fly it into the basket. And we violate flight rule number 1, which is never hit anything, right? Because it's not good for airplanes. Well, this is the one time when you actually want to do it. And the first time you do it, it kind of freaks you out. Then you get used to it. So the most times I've actually in flight for fuel on a single mission is 4. And that was, again, on those 8-hour missions when you have to keep getting gas and getting gas and getting gas. You're pretty tired by the end of it. So, you guys are all familiar with naval aviators, right? That's what I was. I was a Navy pilot, did a lot of deployments off the aircraft carriers. That's what it looks like about 17 seconds before you land on a carrier. And this thing is not stable. This aircraft carrier is 100,000 tons. You'd think that it would just be nice and rock solid in the ocean. It's not. It moves with the waves, pitch, roll, and heave. And the worst I ever saw, you could actually see the screws off Australia. Australia has awful oceans. Beautiful, but they move around a lot. Up 26 feet, down 18 feet in about 12 seconds, and you're trying to land the airplane on the back of that carrier. And that's why we have to practice landing so much in those things. Next, please. The reason we do it, and the way we do it, is 4 cables stretched across the deck that go into basically hydraulic brakes down inside. 1 hook that hangs off the back of the airplane that stops. This airplane we would land at 44,000 pounds. So think about 1 hook is stopping 44,000 pounds going 150 miles an hour and stops it at about 300 feet. Yes, and it's not a good outcome. The question was, has one ever broken? Yes, every once in a while the hook handles or the hook points break or the cable breaks. Who's ever had rope under tension and had a rope snap? What happens? And it whips, right? Very dangerous situation. So we actually have a lot of clear areas on the aircraft carrier flight deck because when that cable breaks, it has happened before. It's very sad, but I mean it just cuts people in half. So we have limits on how often we change those cables, and they measure the strength on them. And the cables actually stretch, so they change them out. This part right here. From this point to this point, they change out every 100 traps. Every time an airplane hits it, they count it. Every 100, they change those out, and then it's a few more hundred on the ones that actually go down in there in the flight deck. Parameters, right? If you get unsafe, or sometimes the deck's moving a lot. If it gets out of certain parameters, that lens over there is actually worthless because it can't keep up with the motion of the flight deck. So then, that landing signal officer is out there just for, he's using his eye or her eye, and they are talking to you, and they'll actually tell you a common call if the deck's moving. Like they'll say, the deck's like that, The lens is worth, let's say, deck's down, you're on glide slope. So even though the flight deck looks completely wrong, you just keep coming. On a 3-degree glide slope, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. And if you get out of parameters, then they'll say you're high or low. They'll adjust it. Okay, we want to talk a little bit about G-forces, and then we're going to get you, we'll take some more questions. Hold that thought.
Okay, how many people know what G's mean? Almost everybody. So how many G's do we have on us right now? 1. Very good. You guys are just the sharpest group we've had. Can't stop it. How many G's do you think the aerobatic pilots can pull in a loop? In a standard loop. How many G's? Almost. 4. So when you see the Thunderbirds or any of the professional teams flying jets and they do a big loop, they are continually pulling 4 G's in that loop. They have a G meter. That's how they know they're doing the loop correctly. It's a 4G loop. What do you think they feel on their body pulling 4 G's? Yes? Pardon? Graying out starts with you losing all your peripheral vision and all you can see is forward, and this turns gray. And then when you black out, you lose consciousness. How many G's do you think it would take to black out? No, we can fly with 4. What do you think? 6? 7? 9? Okay, it depends on you. It depends on your physical conditioning. It depends on how you hold your body. Believe it or not, Captain Keith's going to tell us in a little while about the reason we're bringing this up, though, is because you're watching these people fly around the pylons. So as they continue to bank, they're pulling G's in the turns. So here's a question. It's kind of a math question. If you had an airplane flying around this course at 200 miles an hour and one flying around the course at 500 miles an hour on the same course, which one's pulling more G's? 500 miles an hour. So the faster you go, making the same rate of turn, the more G's you feel. So watch these racers. We don't have racers flying right now. They're probably, slower airplanes are probably at about a 40-degree bank or so. And then a little bit faster, they're at 45 and maybe 50. And you'll see the jets close to 60, maybe a little bit more. So how many degrees of bank